Hey everyone, welcome to today's project where we're going to build an incredibly fun and hilarious dad joke application. This app will have you laughing out loud with every click as it delivers some of the best dad jokes around. Example joke. I had a clock yesterday, it was so time consuming. In this project, we'll fetch jokes from the awesome iconasdajoke.com API. You'll learn how to use the fetch API to get these jokes and display them dynamically on your web page. Here's what we'll cover. Building the interface using HTML and CSS to create a clean, user-friendly design. Fetching jokes utilizing the fetch API to request jokes from iconasdajoke.com. Understanding HTTP, a brief overview of HTTP requests and responses. Async await, making your JavaScript code cleaner and more efficient with async await. By the end of this tutorial, you'll have a fully functional dad joke application and a solid understanding of working with APIs in JavaScript. So make sure to watch the full video, follow each step carefully, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting projects. Get ready to impress your friends with your new coding skills and some great jokes. Let's dive in and create some laughs together. Let's get started and have some fun coding.
Okay, so like I said, in this project we're going to get into working with the Fetch API, making an HTTP request to a third-party API that gives us dad jokes. But before we get into any of that, I just want to create the HTML and CSS, which isn't going to be too much, so we can probably get all that done in this video. So let's go ahead and change the title here to There's not going to be much here. We're going to have a container that wraps H3, and this H3 is don't laugh challenge. Let's have a div here with an ID of joke, and then we're going to give it a class of joke style. So basically, this is where the joke is going to just put. Well, we'll just do this joke here. And that's going to be replaced once we make the request and we're able to put the joke into the DOM. And then we want a button to get another joke. So let's create a button here. Let's give this a joke BTN. Then we'll give this a class of BTN style. Say get another joke. Okay, so let's save that. Good, so we're going to jump into our style sheet here, and let's see, let's get the body of background. Background color is going to be 686 E0. It's going to be our background, blue, and leave all this stuff, center, good. And then our container that wraps around everything. Set that background color to white. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that. Some other things we want to add to this container is a border radius. So we can give it some rounded corners. Let's do 10 pixels. I'm going to add a box shadow. I'm going to add two shadows, which I'm actually just going to paste in. Two shadows. This first one here. So 0, 10 pixel for the offsets, 20 pixel for save that. Let's do it around the corners and have a bit of a shadow. Now we need some padding to take all the content away from the edges there. So let's do 50 on the top and bottom, 20 on the right. Let's align everything. Next align to the center. Width. Let's set the width to 8. Let's actually add a little bit of padding on the body just so we have some space on the side and the small screen. So I'll set padding. Alright, now for the content in the container, let's do the H3. H3, I'm going to set the margin to 0. I'm also going to give it an opacity of 0.5 just to kind of give it that joke go here, but this would be the joke that we fetch from the API. So I'm going to set this font size to be 30 pixels. And let's set the letter spacing. I'm going to set that to 1 pixel.
Never felt so alive in my life. 'Cause you make me come to life every time.
Top and bottom. Auto on the left and right. Give it a max width. 600. So that's the joke. Now the last thing we have is the button. So that has a class of BTN. Give that a background color. Hexadecimal number, which is 9, tab 6, 0. Purple color, border 0. Set the border radius on the button to 10 pixels. Color, white. Let's give this a cloth shadow as well, which I'm going to use. So now we notice the pattern there, and font size set. So the padding will do 14 top and bottom, 40 left and right. Up the font size. Cursor, pointer, button. We want to get rid of that outline, so let's say BTN when it goes focus and when it's active, when we click it, we'll just make it scale down a little bit. So let's say class button, active. Click and hold, we want to have a transform effect. Scale it from 1 to 0.9. Just go down. Okay, so that's good enough for the styling. In the next video, we're going to get into the Fetch API. I'm going to talk a little bit about how that works. I know a lot of you guys already know this, but just for those that don't, it's important to understand at least the very basics about how Fetch works and how HTTP requests work. Alright, so this is the first project where we're actually dealing with working with a third-party API using Fetch to make an HTTP request. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of this before we get into the next video and write our JavaScript. So the API we're working with, an API is just application programming interface. We're working with something called the JSON API. It serves JSON data, which is essentially a JavaScript object that looks like this. So, curly braces, JSON does use double quotes on the keys and the values. As you can see, this is just an object with an IP, joke, and stats. So, if we make an HTTP request, a GET request to this particular URL, we should get something like this. Now, there's a few different formats. The default is going to be HTML, and we don't want that. We want application/JSON. So, to get that, we actually have to send a header. So we send HTTP requests, we send headers. We want to send a header of accept equal to application/JSON. And there's many different ways to make requests. We're going to use Fetch with an application. You could even use curl, which is a terminal program. So I'll just show you real quick.
Been trying hard not to go out of my mind.
If I paste that in, so basically I'm just using curl to make a GET request to this URL, and I'm adding the header accept application/JSON. And if I do that, you'll see I'll get that object with an ID and each call I make is going to be a different joke. So another really nice tool to work with API is Post-it. You guys don't have to download this. I'm just going to show you that I can make the same request. GET request to this URL, and if I do that without having the accept header value, I'm going to get HTML. JSON back, so we're going to add headers for a key, let's say accept, and for a value, it's going to be application/JSON. If I send that, then I get JSON. I just get a simple object, just like you saw in Perl. And as far as these methods, get just means you're getting data, getting something from the server. Post you typically use when you're submitting data, so if you're submitting a contact form, or an admin screen, or adding a new blog post or something, that would be a post request. Put is used for updating data that's on the server, so in the patch, and then delete is to delete data. And these down here, don't worry about this, at least for this, the stuff that I do. So that's Postman. You can download it if you want. I think it's getpostman.com if you want to mess around with it. But what we want to do is make that request from our application. And the way we can do that is using the Fetch API. So the Fetch API provides a JavaScript interface for accessing and manipulating parts of each pipeline, such as requests and responses. And there's an example right here, and it doesn't have to be a third-party API like we're using. It can be your own backend, so you can build an API with like Express, Node.js and Express, or Python Django, or PHP Laravel, whatever it might be. Or you can actually get just standard JSON files. It doesn't have to be some complicated API. Now, when you call fetch to a URL, it returns a promise because it fetches the data asynchronously. So you have this .then when it finishes, and the fetch API is a little weird because you have two .thens. The first one you get the response, and then you say, well, I want the JSON data, so this is just an arrow function that we pass in, and we're saying response.json. And then you have another .then, and this returns a promise as well, and that gives us the actual data. So in this case, we would be logging the data that's in this movies.json. So this is a GET request by default. If you wanted to make like a post or put request, you would pass in the URL just as we did above, but then you'd have this extra options value or object, and you pass in the method that you want. So in this case, it's a post request. And if you were submitting form data, you would pass that, and you have a registration form with name, email, password. That stuff would all go in the form. I'm not going to get too deep into this because we're doing it pretty simple. So we're going to make a GET request to get our joke, put it in our interface or in our application. I'm also going to show you afterwards how we can use different syntax in this .then. So there's something called async await, which makes it a little cleaner, at least in my opinion, and I think it seems to be more popular thing to do when using promises is to async await rather than .then. This can get quite messy. So we'll look into that. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. We're going to be doing a few projects with dealing with APIs, dealing with Fetch. And there's also a library called Axwit, which I actually prefer over Fetch. But Fetch is built into the browser. You don't have to add a CDN or install it or anything like that. Alright, so in the next video, we'll go ahead and make our request to our API using Fetch and put it into the application here, get a joke. We'll also have this button make another request to get another joke. Okay, so now that I give you just a very brief overview of HTTP request and response and the Fetch API, we're going to go ahead and finish up our application here. So I have my script.js, and the first thing I want to do is bring in what I need from the DOM. So we have our joke. We'll call this joke L for joke elements. We'll set this to documents, get element by ID, and that should have the joke. Just make sure. So we're getting this div right here that wraps this text. We're bringing that into our JavaScript. We also want the button, so let's say cons joke btn.
They'll be calling me.
I think I used so we're getting the button as well because we need the method. Alright, so right when we come into this application, we want to call a function called generate joke. And that's going to get called, so we want to create that. So it's a function generate joke, and this is where we want to make our fetch request. Now, like I said, this is built into the browser. It's a native API, so we don't have to include any kind of CDN or anything. And what we want to do is make a fetch request to a specific URL, which is going to be it's going to be to this. I can have dadjoke.com. It tells us down here to make a request to. So let's paste that in there. Now, remember, if we just make a GET request to this without the accept header of application/JSON, it's going to give us HTML. It's not what we want. So we can add an object here with headers. Headers is going to be an object. And we put in for the key what the header we want. Remember when we're in Postman. So when we're in Postman, I set the header of accept as the key and application/JSON and value. So we're doing the same thing here. So accept as the key. Application/JSON as the value. Okay, now usually what I like to do if I'm adding headers is, or not even just headers, but anything in this object, I'll just take this and put it in a variable. So I'm going to cut this, and I'll put it in a variable called config, and right above it I'll just say const config equals that. I just think it's clean. But you can, of course, you can. Now remember, this is going to give us a promise value, so we have to set this to .then. And remember, with the fetch API, we get the response. You can call this whatever you want, response, or you can call it res. And this is an arrow function, and we just want to call res.json to get the JSON. And then the second .then is going to give us the actual data. Okay, so this is another arrow function, and for now I'm just going to console log what data gives us, and I'm going to save this. So this should run right away, so I'm going to open up my console, and what we get is an object with an ID, a joke, and a status, just like you saw with curl, just like you saw with Postman. It's all the same API, we're just hitting it with different technologies, Postman, curl, fetch. So, what do we actually want to do with this? We want to take the joke from this object and insert it here. So, in this arrow function right here, instead of console logging, let's open up code log, and let's take the joke element that we brought in above, and let's set the inner HTML. Let's set that to not just data, because data is the entire object. We want data.joke. Accessing this joke from this entire object. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that. As soon as the page reloads, we see a joke. And this isn't going to work yet because we haven't hooked it up. But we get my pet mouse Elvis died last night and it's pocket. And if I reload the page, we'll get a different one, because remember, every time you put this API, it's going to give you a different joke. Work for a soft drink man crusher. It was so depressing. God, these are so stupid. But yeah, so now we're getting this joke in here. The next thing that I want to do is just hook an event listener up to this button so that it calls generate joke again. So let's go up here and just say joke button. Add an event listener on it that we want to listen for.
Thinking about all the things we did tonight. What a time to be alive.
As soon as I save that, we get a different joke. Whenever we save, it's going to call this function, but also if I click this button, it'll give us a you can check your network tab as well to see any requests that you get. I'm just going to dislocate this for a second. Just reload this. This is going to show you any files ever loaded, like our style sheet, our script JS. But if you look at, so if you look at type, you see this fetch right here. This is, if you made a call to this URL, I can add dadjoke.com. And you can see a few things. You see our response, which is the ID, the joke, and the status. You can also check out the headers. So this is the request URL. There's a get request. That's the method. The status code is 200. The load address, and then any headers down here. So there's response headers, and there's also request headers. And in the request header, we should have this accept application JSON because when we send it, and there's a bunch of other stuff here as well. So whenever you need to see, data that you get back when you make any kind of request, you can check it out in the network tab. So let's just reattach this. So that's pretty much it. Our application is very small and simple, but it works, and we are making a request to a third-party API. Now the next thing I want to show you is how to use the simple wait, because personally I don't like this .then syntax. I think it looks kind of messy, and we can make it look like it's synchronous when it's really asynchronous. Well, we have to use this, but this could happen, while something else is happening. So the .then basically says when this is finished, then do something. So I'm going to actually I'm going to copy this and comment this out. So just do it again with the same thing. Now, here when we make our request, we're going to get rid of just everything here. And what we can do is set this fetch right here. I'll set a variable called res response, whatever you want to call it. Set it equal to fetch. Now, remember, fetch is async, so you have to wait until it's done fetching. So we use the await keyword. Now, whenever you use await inside a function, you have to label that function async. That's why it's called async await. The function is async, and then any promises that you want to put into a variable, you're going to put this await for. Now, this is going to give us, just like we have down here, it gives us the response, but we need to call this res.json. So what we would do in this case, using the fetch API, you could set another variable called data, and you could set that to res.json. However, this also returns a promise, so we have to wait on that. And then the data will be in that variable. So again, we'll just go up here, and I'm just going to copy this line. I'm going to set that joke element in our HTML to data and then the joke value. Alright, so we'll save that. You can see it works the same exact way. I think that this looks better and cleaner because instead of the .then, we're just basically setting what we get back from fetch into a regular variable, and then whatever we get back from res.json into a variable, and we can just continue on. We don't have to have this inside of the .then. It's all preference. Like I said, async await is very, very popular. You're probably going to see it more than not, at least in modern code. So definitely something to understand. I mean, you don't use it if you prefer using .then, that's fine. I'm just going to put a comment here and say,
Game over.
Okay, so both of them do the same exact thing. I'll keep both of them here for reference. Alright, so that's it. Pretty simple project, and we'll use this is kind of a foundation for any other projects that we use when we're making HTTP requests. Like I said, there's a library called Axios, which is what I prefer to use because it's easier to use. You don't have to do the two promise thing, res.json. Also, there's other things you can do beyond the scope of the project in this course. So we'll probably have a project using Axios. That's it. Let's go ahead and get into it.